show, I am joined by Jennifer Creque Blackburn. Jennifer has traveled to over 20 countries and now she's actually a travel agent. She lives in Ohio with her family. She's a wife and mother to one son. She first took her son out of the country when he was 2 and now he is 7. Jennifer, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you, Erica.
So let's start with when you first started traveling overseas, like way before your son, like going back to your family days.
Sure. Well, my parents kind of always sparked an adventure, just going on, little domestic trips around where we lived, then traveling a little bit further into the United States. So that sparked my sense of adventure. And in the summer of 1994, my high school Spanish group classes were taking a trip to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. And when they announced it the year before, I knew that I just had to do it. So I spoke with my parents about it, and we decided that that would be my graduation gift.
Which I'm
A
going to
little bit
stop you
early.
because I
Yeah.
thought that was very interesting that you'd never been out of the country, that your family had never been like taking you out of the country, and yet you hear this and you're like, I'm doing this. This is really what I want to
Yeah.
do. I find that very interesting because most of the moms or parents I bring on the show, it's usually their family had taken them somewhere. They traveled with their family, and you and I are very similar. And like nobody had ever traveled, just something we knew we wanted to do. So every once in a
Hmm.
while, it was meant to be, right? So sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't want to cut you off. I just want to
absolutely.
point that
Oh,
out because I think that's
no
very
problem.
interesting.
Yeah, so I just was like, I just thought I have to go on this trip. And then, especially when a couple of my friends were going, and I knew it was something that I had to do. So I started working at a Greek restaurant, and I saved my tips and my money to help pay for half of the trip. And then the other half was part of my graduation gift for the following year when I graduated from high school. And the second I stepped foot on to Portugal, I was just immediately in love. Like the air, the scenery, the people, the food, everything was amazing. And then after we were in Portugal, we went to Spain, then to Morocco, and back to Spain, and it was 10 of the best days. It was just so much fun and just really sparked my love for traveling to Europe.
It gives me chills because I think about the first time I went out of the country, right? Like when you hear other stories, like I remember that feeling. It's such
Yeah.
a great feeling when you go your first out of the country experience. You're like, this is amazing. So
Yes.
that's what you're bringing back for me. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What was it like when you came back? Just out of curiosity, like your whole.
Um, it was funny. I still totally remember this because I came back, and my mom picked me up, and then I went home, and then my other friends who weren't on this trip, they immediately wanted to hang out and hear about it. And so I went over to their house, and I remember going out that night, with my other friends, and this one guy that we were hanging out with that night, he kept calling me Spain because I had just gotten back from Spain, and like it was just a cool thing, that I got to do. And I just remember telling everyone I could about it, and just glowing from this amazing trip that I had just experienced. And I feel very fortunate that I could experience that
So the
at
change
a pretty
started
young age.
happening, right? You started the
Yes.
change started happening. The effects of traveling abroad started taking place.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
But it took you a while before you traveled again.
It did, because I went to college, and as you know, most people know, you don't have a lot of extra money in college to go anywhere. I did go on some spring break trips, and one year I did go to Puerto Rico with some friends, but to actually get back to Europe, that took a while. And it was after I had started teaching. My aunt and uncle, who I love dearly, they travel a lot, especially to France. My uncle is fluent in French, and they just love the French culture and food. Um, and one day they were like, you know what, we're doing this. We're taking you to Paris. And so that was probably around 2006, and it was Thanksgiving break. And I finished school on a Tuesday and went right to the airport and flew and met them in Detroit. And then the three of us flew to Paris and landed, and like just immediately hit the ground. You land usually in the morning, and we dropped off our suitcases and just started going. And we had all day Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then flew back home on Sunday. So it was a short trip, but we accomplished so much. And I just absolutely fell in love with Paris. Like, I don't know how anyone couldn't, because it's just, it really
Now,
is
this trip,
a beautiful place.
that sparked that love for traveling abroad again, though, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I was in my teaching career, you know, and when you're starting out teaching and you're still single, like, again, you don't have a whole lot of extra money, but yeah, I just wanted to try to start figuring out extra ways to earn more money so I could travel. And I taught summer school and tutored after school and taught some Spanish classes and different things, and then saved up a little so that I could travel more in the future.
But then you discovered people to people, right?
Yes. So I was then approached during my teaching career to be a leader for a company, a student ambassador organization called People to People that's based out of Spokane, Washington. And so I was selected to travel, and I was given the title Area Sports Administrator. So in Columbus, where I was living at the time, I was responsible for scheduling interviews for students who had been nominated to participate in this program, and then trained them to travel abroad. So we would have sort of a curriculum each month and discuss different topics, and their parents would be a part of the meetings as well. And then once it came time to travel, I traveled with a couple other leaders and chaperones. To the first place that I went was to Amsterdam with we had probably 25 students with us, and then everyone dispersed to their groups, and it was kind of like a mini Olympics, I guess I described, because these students were all athletes. So they got to participate in these events abroad, but then it was also a great way for me to go abroad without have to pay anything for it, because since I was a leader and I was working, the company People to People paid for it. So that started a fantastic opportunity for myself. And I was also really happy for these children. Well, they weren't really children by then, they were middle schoolers and teenagers, but it got them traveling abroad as well, and just sharing my excitement of traveling to Europe. So I was able to go to Amsterdam twice, Vienna twice with People to People, Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji. And then my last trip, probably about 12 years ago, was to Greece and Italy and France. So that made it economically possible for me to travel because I was also working.
No, that's wonderful. And you were still teaching while you were doing this as well, or was this?
I was. So our meetings would be on Saturdays generally, or Sundays, and then we traveled in the summer. So I had my summers off when I was teaching. Yeah, I would usually teach summer school in June, and then a lot of my traveling would be done in July.
So you found a way. And what I loved about this, why I wanted to bring this up, was because I never thought about it. I don't think a lot of people think about all the different ways you can travel, cheap or free. I mean, obviously you were doing work for it, but you enjoyed it, and it was something that you were able to share with the kids, and you were able to travel. So I like that. There's other programs out there like People to People, that if people are looking for ways to travel as a chaperone and just to see the world without having to pay, there are options out there, right? This is something I never even thought about until I heard from you. I didn't know, did you know before you were approached?
No, I didn't. I figured, like, if I ever taught high school, that could be a possibility. Like when I was in high school, I'm sure my teachers who went on that trip with us didn't have to pay for it. Part of our expense was paying for them, but then in turn, of course, they helped take care of us while we were traveling. And but I never really thought that I could, as an elementary school teacher, that opportunity would be available to me. But if you're a teacher in your school district, or if you teach at a university, I think that there's definitely opportunities out there that you should look into.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful that we're introducing. I love to find different ways to help people get out there, because not everybody doesn't have money, and I get that, but I feel like there are ways we just don't even know about them. So here's one more way. And you also mentioned too, though, that you didn't necessarily this worked well for you because they wanted teachers, right? But also you mentioned that they also like coaches as well.
Yes, for this particular program, their sports program, there were coaches that traveled with us who worked other jobs. Like a friend of mine, he is an architect, and but he was also a high level soccer coach. So he was somehow found and chosen to travel as well. So yeah,
Yeah. So
there's
again,
other ways.
another option, which I love. Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, I know you were still looking for other ways. I love that for people that like to travel, you look for any way that you can travel. So what were some of the other
Yes.
ways that you were traveling?
Well, domestically, I would go to visit some friends who were living here, but actually, while and so then it saved on accommodations. And while I was on one of these people to people trips, I met my friend now, Antonia, and she was a part of the host crew that was there in Austria,
Okay.
one of the trips to Austria. And she is German, but she was living in Austria at the time. And we became good friends. And we're still friends all these years later. I believe I met her in 2008.
That's great.
And so another time when I traveled to Europe by myself, one summer for my cousin's wedding, after the wedding, I went up to Berlin and then over to Prague. And then I went and stayed with her for a few days when she was living in Graz, Austria. So that helped, that was 3 nights that I wasn't paying for a hotel. And then her and I traveled the weekend up to Munich to meet up with some of her friends. So then we were sharing the cost of the hotel in Munich. And it was also really great to have her to help me along because I was traveling by myself. But then when I met up with her and her friends, then I had other people to hang out
Yeah,
with.
and that's
So
honestly one of the best parts about traveling is you always meet somebody and they're
yeah.
usually from another country. Like I honestly like to go where I'm not surrounded by only Americans because I want to
Hmm.
meet other people from other countries and everybody I have really good friends around the world just because of my travels and I've shared this in previous podcasts, but if they say you can come visit, then take them up on it. They mean it.
Absolutely. Yes.
I really think it's an American culture not to take them, like you don't want to impose or whatever. And I
Mhm.
cannot stress enough when you meet people around the world, when they say come visit, visit them. They mean it, and
Yeah.
it's okay. You're not a burden. And it's a great way to travel. And I'm sure they'll come and visit you too. So
Yeah, she has. She's been
yeah,
to the United States twice and
yeah,
stayed with me one time, and then she came with her boyfriend at the time and his family, and they rented an Airbnb. But she did stay with me the other time, and I was of course thrilled to host
yeah,
her and and take her out and do things and share different things with her here.
yeah.
And she loved it. She's a big traveler as well, so
I love it.
yeah, it's fantastic.
Now, also tell me about Zambia, because that was
So
another way that you traveled.
yes, one of my oldest friends, Rob, he and his wife were living in Zambia and working there for several years. And so another friend of mine that is also that I met through Rob, who was in the Peace Corps with Rob, his name is Mark, and Mark was planning on going in August of this year. Gosh, I probably 2011 maybe, and I was finished with my grad school classes at the end of July, so the timing worked out perfect. And he was going for about 10 days. And so we just coordinated and decided to go visit Rob together. Dana was pregnant at the time, so she had actually just traveled back to the United States. We kind of crossed paths flying over the Atlantic Ocean. She was just getting settled in Washington, D.C. a month ahead of time before she was having her baby. And then when Rob was finished, um, hosting us and taking us around Zambia, he flew back. But yeah, so we had the most incredible trip. I think a lot of people, of course, think to travel to Europe, which I completely understand, and really it's not that far away. And I, of course, love going to Europe as much as possible. But if if any of you have the chance to go to Africa, that is the most incredible place. And I just saw so many things, and we did so much. We took a 6-hour drive down to Victoria Falls and Livingston, and hung out there for a couple days. And we stayed in a hostel. It was a really nice hostel, but it was not that expensive and very affordable. Another couple nights we took this small plane to um, the Zambezi Lodge, I believe it was called, on the Zambezi River. And staying in a lodge in Africa is just a wonderful experience. And there were hippos right in our front yard, basically. And we went on like a canoe trip down this little side river, and you could see crocodiles and water buffalo and all these different animals that you obviously can't just see on a daily basis in the United States. And
Yeah.
um, it was just fantastic. It was unbelievable. We went on a day safari, a night safari. Saw lions and um,
I love that you're
warthogs.
glowing as you talk about this.
Yes, yes.
Great.
Like, I mean, this was so long ago, but it was just amazing. And I really cannot wait for my husband and my son to experience this someday, because I
Oh,
definitely want to go back without a
yeah, and
doubt.
it's so funny that you said that when you mentioned Zambia, because I didn't know about that until you and I already started speaking. And I just released a podcast about a woman who left from Georgia, joined the Peace Corps, and now lives in
Yeah,
Zambia. So I thought it was
yeah, I
really
saw
funny because
that.
you don't usually hear that. So
Yeah.
very interesting. But speaking of your son, let's switch gears to traveling overseas with your son, talking about that. Now, one of the things you mentioned was when you go for on your trips with your son, you do a lot of preparations. So help our listeners understand, how do you prepare to travel with a young one?
Well, it is an overwhelming experience, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And so I've just kind of instilled the love of traveling and just learning about other places since he was born. His nursery had like a world traveling theme. He has
Oh, I
a
love
big
that.
sign that says explore, and my favorite crib sheet that he had was a world map. And um, so it's just something that I knew when I had my son that I wanted him to always experience and love as much as I do. And luckily he does. He really loves to travel and go on new adventures. And so we always read books about the places that we're going. If there's videos that I can show him, we do that. We try to learn a few words from the language, and when it's time to get on the plane, of course, you want to have plenty of entertainment for them. Luckily, there's always those seat back entertainment centers, but you do need backup in case those don't work, or your child gets bored with them or something. But usually they're a pretty good, solid source of entertainment for them. And often when you travel to Europe or Africa or anywhere international, you're flying overnight. So of course you want your child to be comfortable. And so I packed a pair of pajamas, and if they're still prone to accidents or anything, of course you want to be prepared with that, with extra underwear and pull-ups or anything you need to keep them comfortable, and to help you too and be able to enjoy the flight. And my son is a very picky eater, so he often doesn't like what is served on the airplanes. So I pack plenty of snacks and anything possible to get us through those, 6 to 9 hours of flying. And because you definitely do not want a hungry child on an airplane. um,
I don't know who's worse, my son or me when I'm
yeah.
hungry. So
Yeah, and luckily my son, he only drinks water. That's just what he chooses and likes, and so there's kind of an endless supply of water on airplanes. But I usually do buy a backup water bottle or two, and take his own water bottle as well to have, of course, after you get through security at the airport. So,
well,
but I
now
think
you,
it's
sorry, go ahead.
I think it's just really important just to kind of prepare them. But, our children often, they consume kind of how we're feeling. And if you're relaxed and, you're excited, then they're going to be relaxed and they're going to be excited about this new adventure. And it is, of course, really important for them to get enough rest. And so if there's a blanket or a pillow that your child likes, be sure to pack those, of course. And just anything you can think of that would make their travel experience better for them.
And I think it's such an important reminder too, because previous guests have said the same thing. It's like they're going to mimic how you are. So if you're high stress, high anxiety, they're going to feel it too. And the last thing you want is that. So it might be hard for you to control, but just focus on that, and that'll help you probably kind of rein it in a little bit. So
Yeah.
you at least don't show it as much and kind of relaxed and so that they'll relax. But
Yeah.
now you first took your son on an ocean cruise at 2 years old.
Yes.
So how long was that cruise and where did you go?
It was 7 nights, and we left out of Port Canaveral. It was a 7 night Disney Eastern Caribbean cruise, and my husband and I had already previously sailed on this exact same cruise on our honeymoon a couple years prior. And of course, being a Disney cruise, it does help get them really excited because everything on board is all about Disney. And we traveled to St. Martin and St. Thomas and the Disney private island Castaway Cay in the Bahamas. And we on the islands we just went to beaches, and on when we got to St. Thomas, we actually knew a friend who owned a catamaran and it wasn't sailing that day, and so we were able to rent it with our other friends who we were sailing with, and it was awesome. We just walked right off of our cruise ship over to the catamaran and then sailed around in the Caribbean, just around St. Thomas and St. John. So it was a gorgeous day, and yeah, he loved it. He was great, and it was pretty easy. Caribbean cruises are completely different than some going to on European cruises. It's all about being in a tropical, gorgeous place and just kind of relaxing and enjoying yourself and enjoying the sunshine and the ocean. And he loves to swim and he loves the waves and everything. So he was a big fan of the beaches and jumping off the catamaran into the water, and it was great.
So he was only 2 though, and a lot of people don't like to take their kids, especially on longer trips, when they're that young. But you really weren't experiencing, like, you're glad you took him at such a young age.
Yeah, I really never even thought about that. I do have clients who are like, oh, can I take my young child on this trip or whatever? And I always say absolutely, because my son has been flying since he was a month old. He flew to Florida when he was just a month. And the more you get them used to it and adapted to it, the easier it's going to be on you, like in the future, and on them, because they fully know what to expect, and they get just as excited about getting on planes as we do. If you do like to fly, some people don't like to, but yeah, I didn't even think about it because yeah, it was a week long, but I don't know that in my mind, it's just like, what's not to enjoy? Like, you're just on this gorgeous, colorful, amazing ship, and I knew he would love the characters, and because he's loved them on our Disney World trips, and it was just kind of a no-brainer for us. We just thought, oh yeah, he's gonna love it, and we're gonna do it. It wasn't.
Well, and that's something to think about for people who want to travel out of the country with a young one, but they need a little help. Obviously on cruises, you have help entertaining them, right?
You do.
So, well,
Yeah.
you went on a Disney cruise, so I imagine, but just cruises as a whole, you have a lot of help with how entertaining little
Oh
kids.
my gosh,
So
yes.
that's
And
definitely something for people to consider. And we'll talk about why you like cruises so much, but
oh sure.
I think it's just something important for people to consider that are just like, no, I really don't want to think about it. It's too much work. What am I going to do with my 2-year-old? They're going to hate it. Cruises is definitely an option because you have so much help with that entertainment.
You do. You have so much help, and there's there's endless things to do. I have been on that Eastern Caribbean Disney cruise 3 times, and there are still things on the ship, activities and things that I haven't done because there's just so many things to do. It's just really, and it's completely up to you how you use your time. Really, you just have, you have to be at dinner at certain times if you choose to dine in the restaurants, but that's it. Like, and once they're 3 and toilet trained, they can go to the kids club as much as they want. My son's now 7.5, and on our last 2 cruises, we hardly saw him because I wanted to spend more time with him, but he really wanted to go to the
leave me alone.
clubs.
I'm good.
Yeah,
And
he had new friends, and
great, right? You get to enjoy yourselves as adults, and your kids really are fine. Like, they're themselves so much. So you both get it, where everybody's getting a lot from this, and they're having fun.
Exactly.
But on the ship, and then of course when you get off and do your excursions, you have fun there. But there are still a lot of things for kids to do. Now, you took him on a river cruise at 4, which I was shocked by because I didn't know you could take kids on river cruises that young.
Yeah. Yeah, they so we cruised with Ama Waterways and Adventures by Disney. And at that time the minimum age was 4. Now it has increased to 6. I don't think it was because of my son because he was great on it. So I don't think he was the reason for that. But we sailed on the Rhine River in August of 2019, and this was all of our first river cruise. So we didn't exactly know what to expect, but it was just something that I'd been researching and doing some training on, and had booked for clients. And I just was like, we have to do this. Like, this is just incredible. And so yeah, we flew to Paris, and he was great. He slept all night, and he was still tired by the time we got there. And so we had a big kind of jogging stroller that we took with us, and he slept on that, and through 2 more train rides down to Basel, Switzerland, and then once it was time to board the ship, he was awake and ready to go and meet new people. And he was by far the youngest on that cruise, but there were other children who were a little bit older. Some of them, they're really popular for multi-generational trips, and so there were a couple families who there were grandparents, and then a couple sets of parents, and then their children, and they just all took him under his wing, and he hung out with them sometimes, like just doing different activities on the ship and playing. But yeah, it was an absolute incredible experience. And
So there was still enough for him to do on the river cruise, though, being at such a young age.
On a river cruise, you're not on the ship quite as much. Like on ocean cruises, there's usually a couple days at sea. Like on our cruise to the Caribbean, there were 3 days that we were in ports, but then there were also 3.5 days that we were at sea. So, but on a river cruise, you're in a new port every day, and you do most of the sailing at night, and so there's so much to do during the day because you're either out exploring the village where you docked the ship, or you're on a bus traveling, at an hour at the most, typically to a town or city where you have your excursion that day. So there was less to do because we were out and about every day in these port destinations.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what kind of, you love cruising.
I do. I do. Ocean or river.
Why I'd like to speak with so many different people is everybody has their own preferences, right? Everybody has their own way of traveling. There's something out there for you, Why do you like travel? Why do you like cruising so much?
So it really is very convenient, and you do not have to worry about that much. You unpack your things one time if you choose to. Sometimes we use the drawers and the dressers that they have, or closets, and sometimes I just leave my suitcase there out and just go in it. Yeah. And you just do that one time, but you get to go to all these amazing places in a week's time or longer, depending on how long your cruise is. So that just makes it really convenient. It's like a moving apartment that you're just coasting on for a week. And once all your meals are included, and with Ama Waterways, the excursions are included as well. There's some things you can add on, but for the most part, that's just it. And you get up, you have breakfast, you follow whichever excursion you chose, and you go to that city or village or wherever you're going to spend the morning, and then come back. You can have lunch, or sometimes the excursion includes the lunch out and about where you are, and then it's time for the afternoon excursion, and you just do not have to worry about hardly anything. Like you just go with the crowd, and the groups are not really that big. They're right. The river cruise was completely different than an ocean cruise. Ocean cruises have usually between 2,000 and 4,000 people on board, which really you hardly even notice that because the cruises are so big, the ships are so big. And on a river cruise, there's maybe 130 people, and it doesn't even seem like there's 130 people on a river cruise. And then you have the adventure guides with Adventures by Disney, who are your chaperones and you just follow them, and they make it really fun, um and they just lead the way. And but you are also given some free time usually in some of these towns, and it's really, so it's great. So you can make it your own too, you know, like you can follow these tours and excursions, but then you might have a couple hours. And so when we were in Heidelberg, after our tour of the castle, my husband wanted to go to a German pub, of course, you know, and have lunch and drink a couple beers. And my son and I wanted to walk around and go shopping. And so then we did that. And so then we just got to do what we wanted. And we just had to be back at a certain meeting place at a certain time, and then caught the bus and went back to the ship. And they usually have a sip and sail hour with free drinks, and then you're mingling and meeting all these other people on your cruise, and then it's time for dinner, and then in the evening when they start to sail, there's, you know, there could be karaoke or trivia or some other activity on the boat, or if you want to just go and sit on your veranda and um, admire this gorgeous scenery behind you, which is kind of what I have behind me. This is in Germany.
Well, I like to tell people that ocean cruises are definitely more about the ship, this grand ship, and because they have to entertain you when they're on the ocean, right, for a few days. So to me, ocean cruises are more about the ship, whereas river cruises are more about the destination. You spend a lot more time on
Yes.
land. So that's how I kind of, and you know, for people that don't like to be around that many people, you know, there are different types. Like there are different ocean cruises that have more or less people, but river cruises are all around that same, you know, 100, 130, like you said. So the point is there's options out there. And then if you're thinking about doing this, definitely like river cruises, I never even knew about. Now I'm gonna give other people other options because you're an Alma Waterways fan. I'm an Avalon Waterways. I'm an Avalon Waterways fan. So I'm gonna plug for Avalon because I used to work for them. So just like how you went to travel, I wanted to work in the travel industry as well. So I worked for them, and I used to hear all these wonderful things about these cruises from our clients, and that's what opened my eyes to a river cruise. Like who goes on river cruises? You equate it with only, I don't want to offend anybody, but only elderly people. And it's not. I mean, I went on my first, I think when I was in my mid 30s. I loved it. I had a great time. Absolutely great time. So but I didn't know about it until I worked for that company. I had no clue about river cruises. So I love those. I'm more of a river cruise person than an ocean cruise person. I know people love ocean cruises, but there is, just to let people know, they do exist, and they're great, and definitely check them out. There are a lot of great options out there. But I can definitely see where my last one was, I did Vietnam and Cambodia. Amazing. Because the great thing, yes, it was wonderful. And the great thing about river cruises is that they can get into the small rivers, to the smaller towns. They can get into those more intimate places that you can't do with the ocean cruises. So that's nice because you really get that more like you get to know that country a little bit more. So yeah. So thanks for sharing that. Now we're kind of touched on this for you, but your love for travel led you to become a travel agent.
It did. Yes. Yeah. You know, my family does travel to Disney World 4 or 5 times a year, sometimes even more. And we've been to Disneyland too. And now I'm about to go on my 7th Disney cruise. And then we went on the Adventures by Disney. And I found out that there are travel agents who specialize in Disney travel. And so then I applied with an agency, and I was immediately accepted. So that was really nice. And it helps me share my love of traveling for others. It's not an easy job. I think a lot of people think that it's easy, but it's not at all. You're kind of on call 24/7, and it can get very stressful at times, depending on the needs of your clients. But but when I became a travel agent, that's how I learned more about river cruises, because I never would have really thought about that either for us. And then I just started learning about Adventures by Disney river cruises with Alma Waterways, and and then was like, yeah, we need to do this. And now I want to go on all these different European river cruises. We'll probably be doing, I think, the Rhone River cruise next summer, because my husband's favorite wine comes from the Rhone region in France. And
Great to
Van
get it
Gogh,
from the source.
yeah, yeah. And Van Gogh spent a lot of time in southeastern France, and my son's favorite artist is Van Gogh.
Oh,
And so
mine too.
yeah, so that there's just something for everyone, but it's just so enjoyable. And I have to explain to my clients that an Adventures by Disney river cruise is completely different than a Disney cruise, an ocean cruise, because I mean, they're just night and day. And there's no characters on these river cruises or anything, but the adventure guides just make it really special, and they give it that Disney touch, and they just provide another level of entertainment and just extra care for you, and you really just do not have to worry about anything. So it's really nice. When you travel with your family and kids, it can get stressful, but you don't really have to worry about it. You don't have to
And
worry
this
if
is
you don't
why
know the
she sells
language.
this stuff, because she loves it so much. So
Yes.
you do bring up, like, I wanted to bring this up as well, because I was, like I said, I wanted to work in the travel agents or travel industry as well. And I was, travel agent came up for me as well. But one thing that I don't think people realize, that how beneficial it is to have a travel agent. Travel agents, people think for some reason that you pay more when you use a travel agent. It's actually the opposite. And so I don't want it. I mean, we have other things to talk about. So I just want to briefly say, for people that, for me, I would suggest, and you can tell me otherwise, but I would suggest finding someone who specializes in whatever area you want to go, because they know the discounts, they know what to try, what's going to suit your personality, when to go, when not to go. They know the discounts that are available, or if you do this instead, then you're going to get this discount. People, that's their job, is just to learn about that area or that product. And so I am a huge advocate for travel agents, and I wish people would use them. I promise you, you don't pay more money. It's the opposite. Let them do the work. Honestly, as far as a travel agent is a very difficult job, because you're the one doing all the work.
Yeah,
you're the one doing all the work. And I really wish people would start to use travel agents for what they do, because they deserve. You don't pay more, I promise.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it definitely, I mean, I've certainly thought that it's brought value and to my clients, because there's been times that I have saved that money if they book, but then a discount offer is released at a later time. If I can get their reservation modified, I'm absolutely going to do my best to save them as much money as I can. And also just share my personal experiences. I try to do as much as I can, so that when someone comes to me and wants to do a certain trip, well, hey, I've already done that, and I can share you my personal experience.
And that's why I say to go with a travel agent that specializes, because travel agents should specialize in, well, as far as I'm concerned, should specialize in certain areas. And to me, I encourage you to go with whatever you're looking to do. Like, if you want someone that just does Australia, or just does Disney, or just does, then, because that's all they're researching. If you love doing, like, for people that love doing the research, then okay, fine, maybe don't use a travel agent. For me, I want to go and experience it. I don't want to do the work for it. I understand that some people love the research, but for me, I'd rather someone else do the research. But that's exactly what you're doing. I mean, because it's not only, it's value of time, right? It's not only, okay, they're saving money financially, but there's also saving time. And it's also, I think a travel agent can save you from a bad trip. Like, what if, I want to go here because I want to see this and this and this. And it's like, you actually don't get to see that, or, like, they give you that. That's why you go for the experts in that area, because they can tell you, okay, but just so you know, you're going to be doing a lot of walking or whatever, or you're going to be, it's a lot of uphill or a lot of travel in between. Like, that's when they come in handy. So anyway, there's my little support for travel.
Thank you. Yeah. And even for people like myself, who, like, before I became a travel agent, I would always read travel magazines and read up on as much as I can. And I considered myself to know a lot, but there could be something out there that your travel agent knows that you didn't even think about. And also, like, you're supporting a small business. So, sure, like, I don't know, I can use this very crazy example, but, like, my dad can change his own oil in his car, or he could spend $40 and go support a small business and have someone else just do it for him and not have to worry about it, so when people use travel agents, they're getting more bang for their buck and getting help in so many ways that they didn't think possible, and they're
Yep.
supporting a small business. So
There you go.
yeah.
Okay, now let's kind of switch gears. Your son, obviously, you like to take him, you teach him about where you're going, the destinations you're visiting, which I love. What do you think at such a young age he's getting from traveling abroad?
Well, just new experiences and seeing new places and meeting new people and hearing different languages. You know, he can't speak French, but he's heard many people speak French and Spanish and Greek even. Um, and unfortunately, he is a very picky eater, so I can't really say that he's been able to try new foods because he's not always willing to. But um, just just the adventure of it all and just seeing that there's just this big world out there. And he could be reading a book and be like, oh, I went there, or we went there on our trip. And just seeing that there's more out there for us to discover, and all these different people and all these different walks of life. And I mean, that experience is just, I mean, it's priceless. Like, it adds so much to enrichment to their lives. And we talked about how sometimes people think like, oh, I don't want to travel with my young child because they're not going to remember it when they're older, but they will remember it now, and those photos and videos will bring back and spark those memories, and they'll want to go back there someday with their families or their friends. And I would go to London every year if I could. I just love it there so much. I feel the same way about just about anywhere in Europe. Um and I know that, like, we haven't been to London since 2019, but we talk about it all the time. He talked about London every day for probably 6 months after that trip. And we did go to Paris and London after our Rhine River cruise. We just took trains and spent a couple days. And but by the time we got to London, we really only had one full day to spend there. But we just hit the ground running and just experienced everything we possibly could in that one day. And that was one day of my child's 7.5 years, and he still talks about it all the time. And
And
we
he
talk
was
about
only 4 when you took that
he was
trip. So
only
it's
four.
not
Yeah.
like he was an older, like he was only 4 and he
Yeah.
still talked about it for months after, and
Yeah.
he still talks about it.
Yeah,
So
it totally made an impression on him. And I'll never forget the look on his face. We have the cutest photo of when he saw the Eiffel Tower for the first time. I mean, that's a big deal in anyone's life, because it's just such an iconic um you know symbol. And everyone thinks of the Eiffel Tower when they think of France. And
but
he's
again, he
been
was only
there.
4. He was
Only
only 4, and
four.
that still was a big deal. It was the wow factor, right? It was seeing
Yeah.
something he's never even seen. And then what did you say he wanted when he visited Paris?
Oh, yeah, he really wanted a red beret. And
Which
so,
I thought was so
you can
adorable.
find those on any street corner.
Yeah.
And so he has this cute red beret that says France with the little Eiffel Tower outline on it. And he still wears it. And it's so cute. And that day we were on Rue Claire, which my aunt and uncle took me to when I went to Paris for the first time,
Yeah.
because they love it. And it's just, it's a very, you kind of feel immersed with the locals when you're on Rue Claire and going into the cheese shops and the wine shops. And we were just sitting at this little cafe on the corner, and you can see my husband in the background of this photo that I have, and who's at the wine shop. And I'm sitting there outside, and my son has his little beret on, and he was willing to try croissants. So he was eating a croissant and chips, and he's just sitting there like he's a little French child. And it was just the sweetest thing.
Aw,
And
it's adorable.
yeah, it's my mother-in-law's favorite photo of him. And my mom, actually, she printed a big canvas print of that photo for us in
That's
our house, because
sweet.
yeah, it makes a big
That's
impression
sweet.
on
But
them.
like you said, though, it doesn't matter that he doesn't remember every single bit of
No,
it.
no, I'm almost 46. My memory is not the best either these days. And so I can't remember everything, but we look at pictures and we just talk about it all the time. And we talk about all of our trips daily, really. Like, a song could come on that we heard in a shop in Rome this summer, and that, he'll say, oh, this all started because we heard this song in Rome, and now I love this song. And
Yeah.
so there's memories everywhere.
There's
And
memories. Well, it's who you are. It's made you who you are. It's making your son who he's going to be, and his opened his eyes to so many different things that he would have never had,
Yeah.
that he'll take with him, which is great. And like you said, I mean, another benefit was that even young, you said he's made him a great traveler.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know you also mentioned that the quality time was a big thing for what you guys are getting when you travel with him abroad.
It is. Yeah. We just, the two most valuable things to us to experience as a family are our trips. And we try to take as many as possible. And we also love to attend sporting events together. And we just, those things kind of, that's just who we are and what's important to us. And we just love those experiences.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, so before we wrap it up, what advice do you have for parents considering a cruise to travel overseas?
I say absolutely do it. You could do an ocean cruise or a river cruise in Europe. We took back-to-back Mediterranean Disney cruises this past summer in June, and we started in Barcelona and went to France and then Italy, and the next one went from Italy to Sicily to the Greek Isles and back, and that was just another incredible experience for my son and just a great way to see all those countries on one trip. Because if you're doing it by land, which is fine too, of course, you can take trains, you can hire a driver. There's of course other ways to travel to those countries, but he went to 5 countries. Well, we went to Monaco as well, and so we went to all these countries, and we went to Sicily, and all in one trip. And it makes a great way to help keep your kids happy and entertained on the cruise ship. But then when you're in these ports and go to these amazing cities or islands, it's kind of the best of both worlds for your children, I think, and the parents. And like we were talking about earlier, like when you do go on an ocean cruise, everyone gets a vacation. There are adult only areas of the ship, and there are those kids clubs that your kids will likely really, really love and want to go to as much as possible. So, yeah, an ocean or river cruise I highly recommend. And you can do that in Northern Europe as well. There's ocean cruises to the Scandinavian countries, and to England and Denmark and Germany. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna throw in there too that I highly recommend a Baltic cruise. I did that and it
Yes.
was
Yeah.
amazing. I loved it, loved it, loved it. So,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna throw in some advice as well. As I mentioned before, I recommend to use a travel agent because there are, as you can tell, we have two different favorites for river cruises. There are definitely some great river cruise companies out there, but I say use a travel agent because they can kind of help you. Because when all of my research, when I worked for one, it was, okay, this one's kind of good at this one's kind of good at this.
Yes.
Like they all kind of have the different cruise lines have their own little things. So
Yeah.
a travel agent can help you figure out what's the best fit for you. So that's my advice.
Yeah.
Also for cruises, to help you decide if a river cruise or an ocean cruise would be better for you. Huge difference, but with your personality or what you like, like I said, somebody who can't stand to be around a lot of people, then consider a river cruise. It's somebody who loves to do all those things. Like I said, a travel agent can help you with that. But just to consider that option. So there's my two pieces of advice. So
Yes.
Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. It's been a lot of fun.
It has. Okay. Until next time.
Yes, can't wait to chat again.